Honda is among the most popular car companies here in America. When you have models like the CR-V, Civic, and Accord that consistently sell over 300,000 retail deliveries, you know you're doing something right. So what about the enthusiast market? Well, today I'm standing by the two hottest products that Honda has available, a 2017 Honda Civic Type R and a 2017 Acura NSX. So has Honda truly lost sight of their heritage? That's what we're here to find out. Hey guys, before we get started on what could possibly be one of the most interesting videos I've ever done, I wanted to do a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, the Exxon Mobil Speed Pass Plus app. Now this super convenient app makes finding gas stations and filling up your high performance car quick and easy. So basically to get the app, all you have to do is download it from the App Store on your smartphone, which I'll show you later on in the video how to actually use. But within the app itself, you can also apply for the Exxon Mobil Smart Card, which makes it even easier to pay for fuel, especially when you have that fast and thirsty car to fill up. Now to learn more and get started, please visit www.getspeedpassplus.com/red. I'll also include the link in the description below. I want to make one thing clear. This is not a comparison test because we have two very different vehicles. As you guys know, the Acura NSX is Honda's Halo supercar. This is a car that we haven't seen in America for a very long time. The last generation was discontinued back in 2005. And when Acura brought the NSX back for 2017, it instantly won a lot of fans. Honestly, the design is something we've seen since 2012. And literally the production model looks exactly like the concept model we saw a few years ago. Now this 2017 model that I'm showing you is practically a fully loaded model. It's in a very attractive shade of Novelli Blue Pearl. It's a $6,000 option. And you can see the design of the NSX looks pretty much like a lot of supercars you see on the market. It has that familiar swept shape that's very aerodynamic. It's also very low and wide. And Acura says this vehicle competes with competitors like the Audi R8, Nissan GT-R, a Porsche 911. You can see my tester has attractive looking gray finished Y-spoke wheels with the optional carbon ceramic brakes. They are 6-piston in the front, 4-piston in the rear. 19s in the front, 20-inch wheels in the back, and the NSX looks nothing like the original model. If you guys remember, that has a very timeless Pininfarina Ferrari Italian design, where this kind of has a lot of design languages that you see taken from other manufacturers. I see a lot of Audi R8 in the design. I think it's very attractive. All of the vents you see here, there's a big, large vent here to cool the engine. All the splitters, the carbon fiber is authentic. That's like a $10,000 option. It's extra. And this car is mid-engine. That's one thing that the old NSX was, and Acura basically carried over for this new generation, where this car's proportions, if you guys look at it from this angle, looks huge, but it's actually a little bit smaller overall length versus the Civic Type R that's parked right next to it. Now at the back, I actually think the NSX looks more attractive at the rear. I really love the carbon fiber that my tester has with all the extras on here. It just makes it look very, very unique. This is a car, even though it's been on the market for almost 2 years now, it's still turned a lot of heads. I was seriously breaking necks just driving this thing around. Now compared to the Type R, this is a car that's completely different class. This thing starts at $35,000 and there's really no options versus the NSX I'm standing by here is 200 grand. Now the Type R is the hottest of hot hatches in the Civic line. It's got the 2-liter turbo, you guys know. It's front wheel drive, whereas the Acura is super handling all wheel drive. And honestly, next to the NSX, it kind of looks like a van. It's super tall, although it's very wide. It's about 3 inches wider than a standard Civic. But as you can see, looking at the front end of both cars, they have very similar looking headlights. LED headlights, full LEDs are standard, although the Acura has July projector beam LEDs, while these are kind of just a reflector housing for the LEDs. They still have LED turn signals and LED daytime running lights. And you know what's interesting here, the Civic has this faux carbon fiber on the bottom, the lower front fascia, where the NSX has authentic carbon fiber. You can actually tell the difference between the fake and the real ones versus, or at least we're seeing both side to side. This has a more shinier, glossier appearance. But overall, you know, Honda, you can see some of the lineage here. You have this same, you know, air intake here, which are fake on the Type R, but real on the NSX. But there is some functional stuff in here to help cool the intercooler, and the hood scoop is also functional on the Civic Type R. But I mean, overall, you know, in terms of design, a lot of you are going to say, obviously, that looks better. That's, you know, more of a grown-up, more of a mature, you know, executive type of supercar looks. This can be a little bit more on the boy racer side, which I actually don't mind because it's a Type R. I want it to stand out. But honestly, if you're asking me, has Honda lost sight of their design language from the previous generations? I don't think they have. I'm not sure if these are going to look quite as timeless as the original models, but these certainly do look modern and they stand out in today's world, especially when you have so many other performance cars to choose from. So these two cars couldn't be more different when you look underneath the hood, and underneath the hood of the NSX, Oh, just kidding. The engine's actually in the back. So underneath here, you don't really see much, just the radiator, some hoses, some wires. The electric motor is underneath all this. There's 2 electric motors that power the front wheels. Now, if you want to see the engine in the NSX, follow me to the back. And of course, this is where the NSX gets a lot of its exotic car status. It's a mid-engine design, just like the previous generation. And there's a lot of carbon fiber covering the engine. This is part of a $4,000 option, which to me seems kind of silly to let's just look at carbon fiber, but I guess at least it's not plastic. It's a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6. It has no lineage with any other Honda J Series V6. It's actually a 75-degree bank angle, whereas the transverse engines are a 60-degree. This is also mounted longitudinally. On its own, this engine makes 500 horsepower, which is pretty damn competitive in today's segment, and about 479 pound-feet of torque. Now, when you combine it with the electric motors, it's got 3 electric motors total. Total system output is about 573, which is definitely supercar status. It all goes through super handling all-wheel drive, although this car, the gas engine only powers the rear wheels, so you tend to feel it's more rear drive bias when you're out on the road. Fuel economy, it's a supercar, you shouldn't care, right? But because it's a hybrid, it's rated at 21 in the city, 22 on the highway. It goes through a 9-speed dual clutch transmission in Acura design completely. And honestly, it's great numbers. We'll have to go out into the road later and I'll show you guys how all this works. Now, things are a lot more traditional under the hood of the Type R, as they should be, considering this car is literally $30,000 instead of $150,000. But in terms of the Type R, this is the first time we've seen a Type R Civic in America, and this is the first turbocharged Type R that we're seeing. The old Type R in the other countries had a naturally aspirated engine where they did go to a turbo for the previous generation, but it was never sold here in America. So this is the first Type R with a turbo here in America. It's a 2-liter direct injection. It has VTEC, whereas the NSX's motor doesn't have VTEC, and it roughly makes like half the power. This is 306 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Still a lot of power in a car that only weighs about 3,100 pounds, which, by the way, the NSX is about 3,900 pounds. So there's a pretty significant weight difference. Now, of course, the Civic Type R is only front-wheel drive. It all goes out through a 6-speed manual. This, to me, has more of that traditional Honda heritage, whereas the NSX tries to kind of pave a new road with its hybrid technology, a dual clutch, no manuals available. Now, it has a limited slip differential. It has a fancy suspension to kind of counteract the torque steer. The 2 cars couldn't be any more different in the way they drive, but we're going to go over some of the differences in the test drive and figure out, which one feels more like that traditional Honda. Now, I'm sure a lot of enthusiasts have never had a chance to actually drive an NSX, so I'm going to start off by driving this vehicle, and then we're going to switch to the Type R. Now, the NSX is definitely a very different type of supercar versus the original model. The original one was so simplistic in its design. It was a manual transmission, high revving V6. Yes, it had the first application of VTEC. It made a lot of power for its day. Now, you guys have saw my full review on a 94 NSX with the 5-speed manual with the 3-liter engine. Love that car, love the pure experience. Now, first settling into the new NSX, it feels completely different versus any other Honda you've ever driven. First of all, when you have it into its sport mode, it feels like every other hybrid that you're driving. I literally feel like I'm driving an Insight or a Prius, and it's odd. I just don't know if people who buy supercars really care about cruising along in Prius mode, or quiet mode, as Acura likes to say. The ride quality is nice, though, when you have it in quiet mode. They're magnorheological dampers. They really soften up, and you can just really notice that this is a pleasant daily driver, and that's one quality of the NSX that remains, or that the new one has from the old one. You can see out of it really well, and it's a really great daily driver until you put it into its sport mode. Okay, just kidding. That was track mode, and I just tried the launch control there, which the old NSX didn't have anything like that. In fact, this is the only Honda that has actually a launch mode. The Civic Type R doesn't really have a launch mode. It only lets you rev it up to about 3,000. This only goes up to about 2,000 RPM. Then it uses the electric motors to basically slingshot you, and it's brutal. It'll get to 60 in under 3 seconds, or around 3 seconds, and holy shit. So really, the NSX, when you first drive it, you put it into its Sport Plus. It's, all its different modes, has so many different personalities depending on, how you want to drive this thing. And to me, that's the most different aspect about the NSX. It feels like nothing else on the road, to be honest, or no other Honda you've ever driven. And that can be a good and can be a bad thing. Like you purists out there, you're gonna get into this car and you're gonna really hate the fact that it doesn't remind you of any Honda. It has so much low-end torque. You don't even have to rev the engine up, and when you have it in Sport Plus mode, the engine actually sounds pretty damn good. It's that 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 that's all built for this car. It has actually an engine code that no one's ever heard of, which doesn't really match the displacement. It doesn't have the displacement number in it, which is interesting. But again, if you are looking for the most different kind of drive, the NSX is basically almost like, you know, a modern day computer. It's so very much electronic in the way it drives. And, you know, it kind of brings you a new form of driving bliss in a different manner. And some of you may like that, and some of you may not, honestly. So I know what you're thinking. How does one possibly compare a $35,000 car to a $200,000 car? Well, I just drove the NSX. Let's get into the Type R and see how it kind of compares to the Acura performance car. And of course, right from the start, you feel immediately how much more traditional the Type R feels. I mean, it's got the traditional starter noise, other than the push-button start. It's got a lovely 6-speed manual. You guys have pretty much seen my full review on a Type R, so we're not going to go too much in depth with this car's driving dynamics. I really just want to compare the two. Now, the electronic parking brake, the NSX has it too. The Type R has it. It has brake hold. Again, a lot of enthusiasts, the mechanical guys, you're really going to hate that because there's no more of those e-brake turns. But of course, this is the 21st century. This is a modern car. Now, I haven't driven a Type R since I was in Montreal earlier this year, so it's been a while. And the car always defaults to its sport mode. This car, like the NSX, has 3 different driving modes. I'm going to switch it to its Plus R mode, which is its most aggressive mode for this driving impression. Now, the Type R is front-wheel drive, as you guys know. Honda did not decide to do an all-wheel drive Type R. However, the NSX, for it being all-wheel drive, had a lot of rear drive tendencies. And this one definitely reminds you that it's a front-wheel drive car. But Honda has done a phenomenal job with kind of just limiting that. It doesn't have very much torque steer. It doesn't have very much wheel hop, unless you're absolutely asking it for everything it's got. The thing is with the Type R is, if you drive this car like an all-wheel drive car, its front-wheel drive tendencies are going to come out. I mean, this is not something where you could do a super aggressive, a 5,000 RPM clutch dump. In fact, Honda actually limits the car to 3,500 at the most when you're in first gear and you have the clutch pushed in. And really, it doesn't like that kind of aggressive launch behavior. This car could use slightly wider front tires, something maybe even a little stickier to help it put the power down, but the handling is really what makes the Type R such an absolute joy. This will seriously surprise any person who's skeptical about a front-wheel drive performance car. A little bit of wheel hop there, and I can actually feel the steering wheel tugging us slightly. It really depends on certain conditions. If you're, in a perfect straightforward condition, you're not going to really feel too much torque steer. However, if you're kind of in the middle of turning, you might notice a little bit of torque steer here and there. Now, the NSX had launch control, which was honestly really brutal, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or less. This doesn't really have launch control. Instead, what you can do is you can turn off the stability control, you can put the clutch in, put it in first gear, floor the accelerator, it revs it up to about 3,500 RPM, and then when you let go of the clutch, it basically just puts the power down and you're kind of having to fight the front wheel drive traction. As you guys can see, that's not a very nice launch, and it's not something I would do to this car. It's super abusive, but it didn't really have too much in terms of torque steer, just some really bad wheel hop. So again, this will kind of remind you you're in a front-wheel drive car, in that instant. But if you guys, turn the traction control back on, leave it in R+ mode, use the Rev-O-Matic, rev match function of the 6-speed, which, by the way, lovely shifter. It reminds me of an S2000 shifter. A little bit longer throws, but just, a new version. The clutch is super easy. It's just, right, perfect engagement point, a lot of feel. But honestly, it's this car's handling and steering. The steering in the Type R is better than the NSX. It's heavier, it's more direct. It tells me exactly what the front tires are doing. And it's just a much more visceral feel in terms of handling than the NSX, where the NSX kind of felt like a video game. It felt disconnected at times. This doesn't feel that at all. You start to approach a fast corner, you kind of chuck it in, and you think you're going too fast, but the Type R just takes it. It has so much grip from the chassis. I definitely was not going this fast when I was in the NSX, and really I have a lot more confidence in the Type R. This is a car that I can push to its limits on public roads and not feel like I'm going to basically kill myself like I would in the NSX, where the NSX, you know, it's fine. It's just, it's a little too much power at times for the road. This is, you know, one of those instances where you can use all the power, which you're still doing a lot of, you know, dangerous speeds, but the Type R just is so forgiving. It's so visceral. It's so alive and mechanical. It has that mechanical, visceral feel that's kind of dead in a lot of new cars today. And that's what makes the Type R such a joy to drive. And especially at this price point, at $35,000, it's an absolute bargain. And you know, in the performance hot hatch segment, you know, you're really going to be impressed with what the Type R has to offer. Yes, it's not all-wheel drive. It doesn't have that off-the-line acceleration grip that you may be looking for, but it just doesn't matter. I've driven this car on a racetrack. You know, I've driven it on these back roads. It's just one incredible driving car that's the perfect daily driver. This is the car that if I just needed one car to drive every day, I needed the practicality, I needed the trunk space, the back seat room, I wanted it to be fun, to be different, this would be my choice for the ultimate daily driver. So as you guys saw, the NSX is in dire need of some fuel after a few runs, and even though the Type R is really good on gas, it too, when you have some fun, will start to drink up its small gas tank. But thankfully, because of this Exxon Mobil Speed Pass Plus app, to find gas, it's really easy. All you have to do is just launch the app on your smartphone. There's a little tab or button here you can push that says Find Station, and it'll actually pull up a gas station that's closest to you by your location on your phone's location services. You can see here, it'll show you a list of all the gas stations that are near me. So all I have to do next is just pick one that's close by, just choose it. It'll basically just pull up where it is on the map, and all you have to do is get directions. It'll pull up where it is on the app, on the Apple Maps, and then give you driving directions to get you there. So let's head over to the gas station and get some fuel in this thing. So once you get to the gas station, the app makes it super easy to pay for fuel. Once you've created your profile and linked your credit card for payment, or if you apply for the ExxonMobil Smart Card, which I did and was approved instantly, the app is really easy. All you have to do is just click the Pay for Fuel button here on the app. Now it will sense that you're actually at this gas station. I'm at this gas station outside of Northern Virginia. Now I'm actually sitting at pump 10. Once it loads that, it'll show you here which pump you want to choose to authorize. Now you'll want to scroll over obviously to the pump that you're at. I'm at pump 10. Just tap the 10 icon. It'll also ask you if you want a car wash. This particular one is a car wash. The Type R doesn't go through a car wash, so no thanks. Make sure you guys have the correct payment authorized, and then just hit Authorize Pump. Once you do that, it'll authorize the pump, and it'll tell you that the pump is authorized, and you can start filling it up with gas. So thankfully the Type R doesn't have too big a gas tank, so filling it up with gas isn't too expensive, although when you factor in the NSX, it does have a bigger tank and it uses more fuel, but you gotta pay to play. But thankfully the ExxonMobil Speed Pass Plus app makes it super easy, and once you're done filling up with gas, it'll give you an electronic copy receipt, so there's no more fiddling with those silly paper copies that everyone just tends to throw away anyways. But I really wanna thank ExxonMobil for the Speed Pass Plus app for sponsoring this video. It's been one of the most fun video reviews I've ever done, but with all that said, let's get on to the end of the video and find out whether the NSX or the Type R is the more fun to drive vehicle. Earlier in the review, I asked you guys, has Honda lost sight of their roots, their performance heritage? And after driving the two best vehicles, performance vehicles they have to offer, you can definitely tell these are two completely different animals. Let's start with the NSX. This is a hybrid supercar. Now, the original NSX was a lot more simple in its design. This has moved on to a complex, 3-motor electric system with a gas engine. It's all-wheel drive. It's got a dual clutch transmission. There's no manual, whereas the old NSX offered one. And really the looks, it has no lineage to me to the original NSX. Now, that's not to say this is a bad-looking design. It has hints of McLaren, of Audi R8 in the design. I think it looks beautiful, especially in this color. Whereas the old NSX had more of that Ferrari design language, I thought it actually aged better. I have no idea how honestly this is going to age in the coming years. Only time will tell. One thing about the NSX that really was a surprise to me is the hybrid system. When you're in quiet mode, it creeps along in full electric mode, and it basically feels like you're driving a Prius, which I'm just not sure I want my supercar to feel like a Prius. Now, there may be some of you that disagree with me, that you want to just kind of creep along and sneak up on people in your supercar, but you bought a supercar because you wanted to shout. And the NSX's styling definitely shouts, but the engine still has a little bit too much of a quiet noise, even in its Sport Plus and its track mode. I wish it had a little bit more bark. Some of that Honda conservative nature kind of comes out in the NSX, where this is a supercar, just make it shout. And that's really where they need to work on, is the engine. But other than that, it's a fantastic supercar that should seriously be put on your list if you guys are in the price bracket of the $150,000 range. Now that brings me to the new Honda Civic Type R, because if you guys are looking for a performance Honda that has a lot of the heritage, the lineage that you guys remember that made Honda so famous back in the day, this is the car that you want. It has a price that is affordable for probably about 95% of the population if you guys ignore the markup. And it has VTEC, it has a turbo, it has a 6-speed manual that is one of the best driving front-wheel drive sedans on the market, and that's what Honda is really known for. Now, after driving the two back-to-back, I actually found that I preferred the Civics driving dynamics. It was an easier car to approach at the limits. It was an easier car to use on the streets. It got better gas mileage, but again, that's not really too big of a factor for me. And really, if you can get past the looks, sometimes the looks aren't for everybody. I actually think it looks really good. This ultimately is, the car that reminds me that Honda has not forgot about their performance heritage, and I'm super excited to see what the company does in the coming years. I would love to see them do an S2000 successor, maybe even a Prelude successor, but really the company just needs another convertible in their lineup. I'm a convertible guy, and if Honda bring another convertible back to the lineup, you probably would have me signing up to buy one. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this quick little overview of the two best performance Hondas that you can buy. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.